Okay, this lesson for the Koine Project Class, somewhat of a special class. We're entering our 7th year, just finished our 6th year, June 9th, this month. And I am Koine, was trademarked June 9th, 2015, and it was the interest of serving the congregation here in Jacksonville, Arkansas, first and foremost, and then as others availed themselves of the resource, we just began to call it the IamKoine.org Apologetic and Outreach Ministry of Landmark Missionary Baptist Church. And we've been very patient, I guess I call it tossing softballs and building and learning. I learned that as a consultant and collaborating with colleagues in the Missionary Baptist Seminary, especially our professors who were also pastors, is that they wanted to sustain a process in which maturation and development would occur rather than just, right down the bottom line. As you see people today, someone will appropriate a construct or pick a translation. Some might say, I'm King James only, but they don't actually use the King James only and couldn't even teach a class on how to use it or even care to attend one. I've actually taught classes on how to use the King James Bible. It's called hermeneutics, and people who were the loudest about the King James Bible wouldn't even attend because it's easier just to say things. James himself said that there are people who would say they have faith, and he said, I'll just show you my faith by my works. And he was talking about works of faith. And, it's things like Noah building an ark, Abraham offering his son, Rahab outing herself to help the explorers, the spies in the promised land, and all those wonderful things that the Bible speaks of, a work of faith as opposed to works of law. However, this is a different class today, and just to drop it in here as a hinge on which our outreach will turn, there's really no reason to continue to. We've done so much volume of work, and we've met our responsibility, and I'm very much want to commend you all. Dr. Eddie Johnson and I were speaking recently. Dr. John Penn was very pleasant toward the work and the patience. And, it would have been so easy just to decompose and poke our fingers. So this will be the ultimate irrefutable. This is the type of proof that we would use in discrete mathematics. QED is what you write when you can say that it's been demonstrated, it's proven. This is our little sign for conclusion. So you're already reading ahead, those of you that are looking at the board, but just notice, for example, I'll call your attention to something called textual criticism, and then something that we will correlate, construct criticism. And a construct, let's say a fallible soteriological construct, let's say Calvinism or Arminianism or Lutheranism, C.A.L.M, C.A.L.M, and Molinism, just to use those as the four horsemen. And I'll say that gladly because the argument is so sound that it's really irrefutable, because I use the textual critics. And for example, King James-Onlyism, PhD level work, textual criticism, and the highest textual critic, subject matter expert, specialized knowledge, unsurpassed, Dr. James R. White. Now, that's true. As far as academia, I don't know anyone that even comes close to him. So looking at textual commentary on the Greek New Testament, for example, and there's not very many of these left. This one by Bruce Metzger. So I recommend you buy one as soon as possible because the resource will be gone. And let me just read something to you. It says, one of the chief purposes of the commentary is set forth the reasons that led the committee or a majority of the members of the committee to adopt certain variant readings, notice that, for inclusion in the text, and to relegate certain other readings to the apparatus, meaning that device that would tell you to what record it referred to. They call it papyri, things like that. So it says here, on the basis of a record of the voting of the committee, as well as for most sessions, more or less full notes of the discussions that preceded the voting, the present writer has sought to frame and express concisely, A, the main problem or problems involved in each set of variants, and B, the committee's evaluation and resolution of those problems. So they had certain problems, variants, and text, and they wanted to resolve it. So he went on and said, in writing the commentary, it was necessary not only to review what the committee had done, but also to consult once again the several commentaries, concordances, synopses, lexicons, grammars, and similar reference works that have been utilized by members of the committee during their discussion. So, my goodness, what higher level of degree of difficulty would you have? You remember we talked about triage of truth that Dr. Al Mohler was offering as somehow let's prioritize our beliefs and accept in academia, in education, in the ecclesia, the highest academic, the highest school on the planet, the highest university, the highest everything, because the ecclesia is that over which Christ resides at the head. For example, the ecclesia in Jacksonville, Arkansas, where I pastor, he's the head of that ecclesia. We are 100% his body. We gather there for the full purpose to provoke each other into love and unto good works. We are there to serve the same interest Christ demonstrated, revealed to us while he was here on this earth, that his Father by him would receive the glory in that ecclesia. So there's nothing higher than the ecclesia, not a university, not a seminary, nothing. So that being the case, when we talk about textual criticism, there's nothing higher as far as degree of difficulty, as I was suggesting. Al Mohler was trying to say that somehow R.C. Sproul, the late R.C. Sproul, could grasp and grapple with the Trinity, but he might not understand baptism, or he may not know the Bible doctrine of the ecclesia or the prevalence of the ecclesias throughout history for 2,000 years. So we try to then find a way to mediate this and to kind of overlook it. The only problem is it's not possible with the textual criticism, and in this case that I'll demonstrate very irrefutably. Here's a linguistic key to the Greek New Testament. If you don't have that, it's for people who use language. You'll hear people say, we don't need Greek and Hebrew. Well, no, it's a mental engagement. It's quite critical. As a matter of fact, I've got so many here. Here's a Nestle Aland Greek English New Testament. Greek English New Testament. Here's another Greek English New Testament, UBS 5th Revised Edition with the New International Version. Anyway, here's the Greek New Testament according to the majority text. Oh my goodness, what is all this? Here's the Nestle Aland, the 28th. Here's my Greek reader, which I don't even want you to see how worn that one is, because I'm embarrassed to let people know I even bothered reading all these books and this stuff, and all of a sudden you find out, oh my, what's that? And I say, well, it's one of my Greek New Testaments, and they break. I have another one. I had to tape it several times, and then I have this book-by-book guide of Greek New Testament. You say, what are we talking about? Well, the degree of difficulty involved. It's a PhD level over here. Dr. James White would be the top of that degree of difficulty. He would also exemplify the subject matter expertise and specialized knowledge called for in textual criticism. And now you're starting to notice, where are we going with this? Well, let's go here then for a moment. He wrote this excellent book. I can't remember. Is it 1995? Was that what it was? I think it's 1995. Oh me, here we go. Yeah, 1995. Very good. About the King James only controversy. Now, remember, textual criticism, King James only controversy. We have better Greek text, they say. I have these Nestle Aland. We have all this. I didn't even bring a Textus Receptus to prove my point. So here it is, and here is the Greek Interlinear Greek New Testament. This one is. Instead of using an eclectic Greek text, this interlinear offers the Textus Receptus as restored by F.H.A. Scrivener and published by the Trinitarian Bible Study. Now, F.H.A. Scrivener was an interesting person, a Cambridge scholar, who years before his work in the 1873 King James Version, 1850, Baptist people who use the Bible as a rule of faith and practice insisted that the King James Version, there were many versions of the King James Bible, be corrected, mistakes addressed, and misspellings and all those things that were there. I think there was thousands noticed by Thomas Curtis, a Baptist English teacher. He was an English teacher. And this 1873, for example, and you can read in logos.com, and I love when I hear preachers say it's logos, not logos. I'm glad you said that. Because, if you're really that precise and hung up on even phonetics of the Greek letters and sounds of a word, you really need to be consistent with what you appropriate. Again, this is a little different approach, this little video tonight, because that I'm making here. It is late at night. I didn't even think about it. Yeah, see, I have to usually do that because I don't have the same sleep cycle. But anyway, so here it is. It's been corrected. It has all types of footnotes. You can go online to logos.com, and you can even read about the CEO and president of Faith Life that had produced logos.com, and read what he said about why we even have a King James Version today. But now notice where we're going with this. If you can do this high level degree of difficulty, and this book is the last one on which the blood of Baptists and all the persecutions and all the labor and all the toil and all the stigma and all the controversy about Baptists wanting baptized as immersed, wanting ecclesia to be translated as a congregation, like Tyndale did. Now, Tyndale wasn't a Baptist, but he was very much faithful to the text, and it was the majority of his English translation, which is what the King James translators amended, so that you're looking around 80% of both Old and New Testaments. The whole thing was basically his. So that's not what the point was. But if, for example, if we have these four Bibles, KJV, NASB, ESV, and the Net Bible, and they say they're all according to formal equivalency, and they're all word for word, and they're all the Bible, they're all the Word of God. Here's the point. If you can move on, if one can, through textual criticism, leave behind, and that was just a tribute to Tim LaHaye. He was a Baptist, and the late Tim LaHaye. If you can leave behind, through textual criticism, the KJV, and people do. I mean, there are people who perhaps, I don't even know who they are, but there are perhaps people, young men, let's say in their 30s maybe, who have never used the King James Version of the Bible. They've probably pastored their entirety of their lifetime with ESV or New American Standard Bible, or perhaps, I don't know how old the Net is, so we'll have to look at that. So there's people out there that probably never use it. But if you can leave it behind, then one cannot justify these constructs. Calvinism, Arminianism, Lutheranism, Molinism. That's construct-onlyism. Prove it's over. There's nothing else to talk about. Well, let's go over and see. If you can critique the Bible, if you have not seen how complicated these books are, and if you don't have one of these, you really need to get one. Just to leave it out on your desk, so when someone comes by, they say, "Oh my, he's a textual critic." And it's a real work. It's a labor. It's a toil to go through text. I took a class in ancient text at the University of Arkansas here at the Little Rock campus, but I took it online. Professor had once been at Harvard. He was now working there because it's online. So, and he was a scholar, and we were going through all these texts, and we were comparing them to the Koine text of the New Testament, along with other Christian texts. Some of them were Gnostic texts. So that was a labor to have to sort all that. We read about Irenaeus. We read about horrible things that happened in Lyon, France in 170. We also read about the controversies of canonizing the Scriptures. So we were in a very thorough work. And then, like, for example, I have multiple bachelor's degrees. I have 3 bachelor's, 3 masters. I took Cal 3 twice, Cal 2 twice, Cal 1 twice, trigonometry 3 times, algebra 3 times, discrete math, statistics. Now, I did that all after I had finished a lot of my coursework, but the degree of difficulty for evaluating constructs, I'll be generous. It's a high school level, secondary. Now, I was wanting to say even lower because you can clap out of calculus, in high school. You can take a test. You can take AP calculus in high school and go to college. Now, calculus is sophomore level, and sophomore is from the word sophisticated moron, right? Sophisticated moron, very interested in it. So you have high school level, secondary education, and not James R. White, but any YouTuber. There's YouTubers out there now that didn't attend seminary, didn't study Greek grammar, Hebrew grammar. They didn't study the general epistles, the church epistles. They didn't take Bible survey. They didn't take New Testament survey, Old Testament survey. They didn't take homiletics. They didn't take pastoral counseling. They didn't take dispensation, different ages of the Bible. They didn't then go to graduate school for the syntax, the translation classes. They didn't go back for systematic theology. And then they step in on stage as any YouTuber can now with no more degree of difficulty than this. I mean, they may have post-secondary education. They may have college degrees. I don't mean they don't. I mean the degree of difficulty. And they can just tear these constructs apart. So here's what I'll just have to tell you. There's really nothing. I really can't any longer. You all have done well. You've come far enough, and I respect it. It's just, even recently after COVID-19, as pastoring where I've been now, I was there when 9/11 happened. I saw what happened after 9/11, or regrettably what didn't happen. You always think people will step up and maybe our society for a few. No, we seem to. You would almost have. It'd be a difficult time thinking something like 9/11 ever happened. Then you go through a society that's literally imploded, a COVID-19 global pandemic, and now we're on this side of it, and people are still trying to use silly jargon in these four, whatever that is. And John Calvin was a walking contradiction, self-contradicting religionist. You can look at his work. I don't want to. You can read about Luther and his own contradictions. I don't want to read about it. You can read about things of Pelagianism. I wouldn't waste my time with it. I don't have to. Dr. William Lane Craig is far more sophisticated and scholastic than the degree of difficulty involved in some guy named Molina, whoever John Calvin was, Jake Arminian, or 1517, October 31st, Martin Luther and his disputation with his own Catholic tradition and order. And he has errors. He teaches baptismal regeneration. Nowhere in the Bible. It's not even a possibility it's in the Bible, but those who would say it is would avoid those of us who know it's not. So that's just the way it is. And to think that all this time, people, for supporting the King James Version of the Bible, I will say this, that as Dr. John Penn said, when you place that Bible in its historical context and you see the relationship of the churches, the ecclesias, and you see the Baptists who labored in word and doctrine and what they did to insist that that book be put in its best format possible, and you see the providence of God in that. And this is the last one. All the rest are now commercial. It's all about anything we want to be about. But now if we say we have super Greek text, great. I have no problem with any of that. I have no aversion. But to hear people say TR Onlyism or King James Onlyism, that's a valid point. It's just you make our point here at imkoine.org. You make the point that we were trained in hermeneutics and apologetics and in systematic theology. And as our language professor, Dr. Randy Murray, for example, he was very scholastic in the Greek text, not TR Onlyism and not King James Onlyism. But he definitely was honest with the text, and he didn't support any of these things. And for example, when you hear controversy around Dr. Bob Wilkin, faithalone.org, or Dr. Leighton Flowers, Soteriology 101, and let's get to the best, okay? Dr. John E. Penn, BaptistLamp.org, and Lamp Theological Institute, that body of material that he has, he can't seriously afford the time. He just cannot even will himself to afford the time. Now he will for a student that wants to learn, but he's very consistent. And I'll just end this because my time's running out. But remember, here it is, irrefutable. It's the last argument you'll ever have to hear. There's nothing else for us to do. It's the hinge on which our outreach and our work will turn. We can now move on. Because if someone can leave behind the KJV, move on, let's say, to whatever this is. And yes, I've seen and used all these different Greek texts, all this nice stuff. But if you can move on from that, then there's no one of us who can justify construct onlyism. Now, whatever the investment is, whatever it is, it's tethered people to those things. But it's jargon-laden, it's self-contradicting. When you try to find definitions for the terms in these constructs, people don't have one. There's no agreement on it. There's hyper versions, there's high versions, there's low versions, there's subversions, there's commingled versions. There's some people that are 2 points one and 3 points the other, or vice versa. There's people that say, well, I really like parts of Lutheranism, but I don't understand why they teach baptism regeneration. Well, baptism regeneration is not the gospel. There is no gospel about baptism. Baptism is about the gospel, and there is no water in the Bible for baptismal regeneration. And any good Baptist, any good student of the Bible, any good person who's given the effort to go through and see the history of the Lord's churches and how they prevailed will tell you, we got plenty of water if you want to be baptized into Christ. That is the ecclesia, by the ecclesia under the purview of the headship of Christ Jesus by that ecclesia alone, who has the exclusive honor and an honor to do it, because the first 3 centuries of Christianity, there's incalculable numbers. And that was in a class at University of Arkansas here on the Little Rock campus. I was in a Sunday school class somewhere where someone was just, shucks, let's just go along with whatever we think. Now, we're actually studied all this, and yeah, the degree of difficulty over here is not calculus, it's not algebra, it's not even geometry. And I tutored a great student who was in high school going through geometry, and met with the teachers, got the homework, got the assignments, put it in sequential order, took them through an incrementalized process, found the steps they were missing so that they could successfully achieve their accomplished goal, which was to successfully complete that design curriculum called geometry. So I haven't found anything in these constructs that even come close to trigonometry. So I don't know I guess no one noticed that this would be correlated, that one day, and this has been done for quite some time, and just when do you bring this out? When do you just put an end to the conversation? Well, I don't want to end the conversation, but I won't waste any time with an advocate of Calvinism, especially someone that's this level for textual criticism. I mean, if you can go through the Bible, if you can handle this textual commentary by Bruce Metzer, you can take these different Greek texts, you can take this lexical key and just breeze through it. And yet we're saying we can't seem to move on without these 4 horsemen. Oh yeah, this is nothing. And that's just it. It's actually, it's really irrefutable. And there's really no one on this planet that can argue, because what you have to do is, now how do you justify this? First, the KJV is a Bible. It's truly the Word of God. And these are truly the Bible. These are all according to formal equivalency, word for word. So these are valid. These are the big 4. And I'm using 4 to match the 4, of course. And this has the history on it. We all know that things were different after this one. Okay? So that if a person can, through textual criticism, leave behind this, it's not even comparable. So you say, well, how do you function without Calvinism? Quite well. Quite well. Without Arminianism, quite well. Without Lutheranism, quite well. Without Molinism, quite. How does Chris Roseborough justify being tethered to Lutheranism? How does a Michael Brown present himself as a great scholar in language and publishes books, and yet he's tethered to Arminianism? How does a Dr. James R. White, who's unsurpassed, that's a fact, find himself tethered to that? I mean, I don't think Dr. William Lane Craig, I don't think Molina could keep up with him in a conversation. But that's enough. That's the end of it. This is why I said this is a hinge on which our history turns as we go in this month, June, finishing our 6th year of this social media platform, I guess, whatever it is. But as we move forward, we'll do our lessons. We'll go over our text. We won't always say, well, here's another fallible feature of Calvinism, or here's another error of Arminianism, or here's another problem with Lutheranism. Well, yeah, we can evaluate them, but the simplicity of those things are really far beneath what we now are able to do by being faithful to engage a text, critically think, to evaluate. And we do formative evaluation, summative evaluation, confirmative evaluation. We do meta evaluation. We do full scope evaluation. We define, document, dispose of fallible elements. So you all have this now. So, but remember, without you having to have your PhD in biblical languages right now, you can stop and say, well, now notice textual critics can take the Bible and then see advancements in Greek text and move toward those more advanced, sophisticated, more accurate, as they say. They say that. And they can go through textual criticism at a PhD level, unsurpassed subject matter expertise and specialized knowledge, and they can just leave that Bible behind. Okay, but now if you can leave that behind, don't even pretend that we can't leave this behind. Okay, so it's not even comparable. So you have a blessed day and enjoy this liberty you have, and enjoy the fact that you have an academic presentation. You have an argument that is a proof. It's not banter. It's a demonstration. So you can say QED. Therefore, a textual critic cannot seriously deny construct criticism, because this is much lower difficulty. So have a blessed day and enjoy this lesson, and be thankful for this hinge on which our history is now turned.